Hi, I'm John,
And I'm the nerd, also known as Andrew.
and welcome to episode 4 of the Nerdborne podcast. What we're doing today is we wanted to talk about revolutionary or landmark games in a title. And what I mean about that is games that really kind of either redefined sort of the scope of aiming or the scope of gaming, rather, and or games that really kind of just made genre-wide sweeping changes. And that's I figured it would be kind of a fun connection to really think about these games critically and why they were such landmark titles. And Andrew, you've got something to start with here, so take it away.
Well, I figure if we're going to talk about games that are landmarks, games that change gaming, games that are revolutionary, I just kind of figured that you got to start with what started it all. And the very first game that ever started all, like if you go to ask 100, say if you were doing like the Family Feud, ask 100 people, I'm pretty sure that 90 out of the 95 out of those 100 people are going to tell you that it's Pong
Hmm.
that came out in 1972, which is false. It is not Pong. The very
Ooh.
first video game ever created was created in October 1958 by physicist William Higginbotham. Created, it started as the very first video game. It was very much like Pong. It was a tennis game. It was very popular in his Brookhaven National Laboratory open house that he was at. It was not made for distribution, but
Hmm.
it was the very first game ever made, which of course inspired the game that we do all know about, Pong, that came out in 1972.
Hmm.
Very first game to start it all. Gotta look back on your roots, man.
That was admittedly going a little deeper than I planned for this, but I can't argue with it. I mean, it was the first fucking game.
Yeah. I just seemed appropriate. If you're going to talk about games that are revolutionary, you got to talk about the great granddaddy.
Yeah, talk about the first revolution. Wow. Huh. I admit,
Exactly. You're not going to talk about World War II without bringing up World War One.
I don't know. Have you seen American World War II movies?
Uh, Hollywood's stupid, so we don't pay. We pretend they don't exist. All right. So now that I did my little deep, gave out all the my deep segment little there about great granddaddy or what the fuck ever. Why don't you tell me about which first on your list of revolutionary games?
All right. Well, since we're talking about firsts, this is one thing that I kind of really wanted to touch on because uh, it was sort of gaming's first little main break into the mainstream, and that is Doom, the original 1993 MS-DOS first-person shooter.
Mm, I remember it finally.
As do we all, or as we should. But
Yeah.
part of the reason it was, revolutionary is it, it created a genre. I mean, yeah, Wolfenstein 3D was the first as that kind of similar game, but Doom was the one that really kind of fucking took it and ran with it.
Hmm.
Um, like for God knows how long, we called first-person shooters Doom clones until critical perspective on video games in general had kind of caught up to being a little bit more unreferential.
Right. Right.
But it's just one of those things. That's it. It was kind of just it was gaming really starting to get its start rather than just kind of being sidelined to just nerd shit. Like the average person would look at a game like Doom and go, "Oh yeah, killing demons and shit, yeah."
But a gamer is gonna look at that and go nostalgia.
Hmm.
I think Doom's one of those games that it made you one of the very first game that made you feel like you were a fucking badass.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, I know you look at like how you look at the graphics now, and you're like, oh man, they look so shitty compared to what we have now. But back then, when I was a kid and I first played Doom, I thought that was like the most amazing thing in the entire world. Yeah, I got to run around and fucking shoot demons right in the head, and like it's just like get different weapons and shotguns and stuff like that. Like I'm not used to like Super Mario and stuff. Like Doom was definitely revolutionary. I mean, of course, Wolfenstein was the very first one I did, but I like how you said that Doom kind of picked it up from there and just ran with it. That was a good
Yeah.
analogy. Yeah, they really did. I mean, so you thinking back on it, man, like you were like the bee's knees if you had Doom at your house.
Mhm.
Yeah, all the kids wanted to come over to your house to play Doom. It was also like one of the games I'm pretty sure that started my anger issues.
And
It's funny that you brought up Doom because I had Wolfenstein on my list.
oh, huh.
Yeah, like why they like the same thing when I brought up about the very first game that got released, man. Wolfenstein's great granddaddy of the first person shooters. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Doom definitely did popularize it. You know what I mean?
And it was also kind of one of the first moral panics when it came to video games because that's it. It was really kind of dark and violent, and there was
Yeah,
blood and gore, and you were using guns, and I
that's
believe a
what.
popular term.
Yeah,
Hmm?
that's what made it cool.
Oh yeah, of course. But like a popular term I think for the media back then was murder simulators.
How's yeah?
If only they knew how right they were. But hey, you would think a bunch of conservative motherfuckers would be really quite behind taking, shotguns to Satan.
No. Hell yeah! You'd think the Christians would have liked it.
Shit, you'd think. Like, uh, coincidentally, there's a famous quote when it comes to Doom, and I actually more or less know it from memory, and it's by Terry Pratchett, who I don't know if you've ever read the Discworld series, but he's the author of that, and the dude was a gamer right up to until he died. But let me spit out this quote real quick. The quote is, "Over the centuries, mankind has tried many ways of combating the forces of evil: prayer, fasting, good works, and so on. Up until Doom, no one ever seemed to thought about the double-barrel shotgun. Eat leaden death, demon." End quote.
I fucking love that. I'm gonna get that framed. That's going right above my community monitor and that's getting framed. That is awesome. It's like a Genghis Khan quote. That was fucking dope.
I, you're not wrong, actually. Holy shit, I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah. Uh, since we're on blood and gore kind of thing, one of the ones I have on my list that really kind of started that. I mean, this game got like a lot of negative feedback when it first came out. Thought it was going to raise a bunch of killers, and like me and you are OGs to this game, and that is Mortal Kombat.
Dun
The
dun 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 dun. Dun. Oh wait.
yes, the original from 1991. Dude, how long did it take me and you to beat fucking Goro for the first time?
Oh god. I don't even. We were at that shit for actually
For
probably weeks.
yeah, like it literally, man. I remember the first time that we beat Goro. It was like I never felt an accomplishment like that before in my entire life. I was like, it is possible.
We
Yeah,
did it.
yeah, forearm bastard.
No god.
Oh man, so many hours into that original game, man. I still play it to this day, even with Mortal Kombat 11. But that game was just like, it said it was the first of its kind. I don't know any fighting game that was like that before Mortal Kombat. Like it is legit the first of its kind.
Street Fighter, I guess, would probably, or well, Karateka would probably be close to the first fighting game, but definitely Mortal Kombat is the one that raised a bunch of stink, a bunch of controversy because that's it. It was blood and gore and stuff like that, and I just
Yeah.
like to state that to this day, here I am, 32 years old. I still remember the blood code for the Sega Genesis version of Mortal Kombat.
That is dope as hell, dude.
ABACABBA.
I'm sure somebody's gonna Google that to make sure you're right. It's like memorizing the code from Mike Tyson's Punch Out.
Mhm.
That is dope, man. I still remember like the fatalities and stuff, man. Like I remember the first time I seen that as a kid. I'm like, they are allowed to put this in a video game. Like, yeah. This is like the
Yeah.
most. My mom is gonna let me play this game. It's the most awesome thing ever. Like I remember the first time I uppercutted somebody and they fell down into the pit into the
Mhm.
spikes, and that became like my new favorite thing. I played that level over and over. I probably did that like 10 times, and like I would get pissed at myself anytime I played at that level and I didn't uppercut them down into the spikes, or even being Scorpion and taking off his mask with the skull and lighting him on
Yeah.
fire and everything. Oh man, just classic. Get over here. Oh, I'm sorry, copyright. Please come here.
No, no, we can get away with that one because you can't
Okay.
copyright individual words.
Oh, okay. I
And
know something that
plus,
said Trump.
I think Mortal Kombat 1 at this point is free domain, but I mean, worst comes to worst, if the video gets struck, well, I'll just cut that out. So sorry, listeners, if you lose access to the video.
Hey, I said please come over here. Change it up just a little bit.
Speaking of
So,
changes, let's or we're going in a slightly different direction, but it was definitely still kind of in the our well, that's it. It fits the topic. Legendary games or landmark titles, and I would pose that. Well, I mean, it's not really an argument. I know I can't think of anybody who'd disagree, but Final Fantasy VII, specifically seven.
that's on my list too.
But
Rightfully should be too.
indeed, but like part of the reason is it's another one of those games that really kind of helped break gaming into the mainstream. Uh,
Okay.
for a lot of people, especially or rather, for a lot of people in the West here, I think it was actually kind of their first exposure to Final Fantasy and that style of game in general.
And JRPGs.
Yeah, because you know,
It really was. Yeah, it really was. I think to this day, a lot of people credit it with making RPGs popular,
mm,
and rightfully so. I still remember the first time I seen my father playing that game, and I was just like blown away by it. Like the graphics of it, the gameplay of it, like the summoning and everything like that. Like I was obviously a very young child that came out in 1997, I believe.
yeah.
So yeah, so I was only 9 years old when it first came out. So yeah, that was obviously wowed me by. It's crazy what 9 year olds looking at now, and when my 9 year old self was looking at it, it made me feel old.
Oh God, technology
Yeah,
has come so far.
yeah, no kidding. But I agree with you. When it comes to Western civilization, I don't think you can make any argument for any other game making JRPGs or even RPGs popular.
It definitely that's it. I think it really was like the PlayStation landed at a very curious time in sort of gaming history,
Mhm.
and it with that it kind of really it was the first time I would say that gaming really kind of got a foothold in the mainstream when the PlayStation came out.
Mhm.
Um, just because that's it. It was something new. It was different. It was running off of CDs and stuff like that. You know, it was I think a little bit more relatable than cartridges to the average consumer.
Yeah, yeah, that's a pretty good point too, man. Because I remember the first time I saw that it was running on CD, and just like a mind blown moment. I'm like, that's a CD. Like, you put the CD in there and it reads the CD. How the hell does it do that? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it it was also the way it came too. Like it came with a four separate disc, obviously, and you had to
Mm,
like save it on a memory card to go to the jump to the next disc. And like normally you think that it's like since you go from like just using a cartridge, right, to
Mm,
that you have to use 4 CDs. Normally, you would think that would annoy people, but I don't think people were annoyed by it because of how good the storyline was. That
mm,
yeah, the storyline was so good. They're like, okay, hurry up, put this to it. I gotta find out what's gonna happen. I'll put this, so on and so forth. I think that's the reason why people like fell in love with like that 4 disc version of it. You know what I mean?
mm.
Even to this day, they talk about it highly. They don't like, oh, it's a pain in the ass. It was on 4 discs. They're like, oh, it was so awesome.
And it's also worth pointing out too. Final Fantasy VII is a little bit kind of an oddball in the franchise in general. Like
Mm,
Final Fantasy 6 and 7 are kind of a period of self reflection for for SquareSoft at the time.
mm,
Um, like or rather, Final Fantasy VI is very self-referential about you know other Final Fantasy games that they've made. A bunch of do-gooder heroes going out to save the world and stuff like that. And uh, Final Fantasy VI, that was really the one that they were kind of discussing the weakness of the characters, and
oh,
like if Final Fantasy VI was the deconstruction of Final Fantasy, then Final Fantasy VII is certainly the beginning of the reconstruction of Final Fantasy as a franchise.
yeah. Yeah, I agree with every single word you just said. Final Fantasy VII was so popular that Final Fantasy still has like a popular name
Mm.
brand just because of that game alone. Like
Well,
when they came out with the remake, dude, like the gaming world pretty much went on pause.
mhm.
You know, everybody was on the remake.
It was also kind of, the first Final Fantasy where everybody was just sort of like, okay, more please. That's how we got Advent Children. That's how we got, Crisis Core, fucking you name
No,
it. Like Final Fantasy VII in of itself is an entire franchise, and
yeah.
no other Final Fantasy game has gotten that kind of treatment.
There's well been a couple of them coming close, but always fall short.
Hmm.
Like the Final Fantasy fans always have like their 10. We're like huge Final Fantasy fans seem to like always give Final Fantasy 7 that respect, but they always have like another one that's a favorite. Like mine
Mm.
personally is 8. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I give Final Fantasy 7 that respect because I wouldn't have 8 without 7.
Mm.
You know, I think hate for actually got a little bit too much hate because of people were expecting it to be exactly like 7.
That's probably a fair assessment, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. But going on games that like made something popular like Final Fantasy made RPGs popular. I do have a game that I think completely changed gaming and like
Mm.
from the ground up, and that's Grand Theft Auto 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, that game, I think it's got to be one of the very first open world games. If it's not the very first one, it's the least the most popular very first one. That's a
Mm.
fact. You know, no, that's not. I don't think that's debatable. I still remember playing it for the first time, and I was just amazed. I'm able to drive anywhere I wanted to drive, able to start any mission I wanted to start. If I wanted to run up and shoot somebody and then run away, I could do it. Like games all up to that point always had like restrictions, and like that game just felt like it didn't have any when you played it for the
Yeah.
first time. You know, and it felt like you could just do whatever the hell you wanted to. Literally taking a bazooka and like shooting down helicopters flying overhead. Like, what is not to like?
Not much.
Exactly. I mean, come on, even to this day, people make. I like all the jokes that people make about Grand Theft Auto. It's
Mm.
like it's either coming from San Andreas or it's coming from Grand Theft Auto 3. The only reason why I'm not saying San Andreas is because I have to go to the original. Grand Theft Auto 3 that started it. Grand Theft Auto 1 and 2 was also obviously the 2D platform. Grand Theft Auto 3 was the 3D open world do whatever the hell you want kind of game. And there was, I don't, like I said, I don't know if there was a game like that before that, but it's definitely not one as popular.
Uh, I don't think really there was anything quite in the same vein as Grand Theft Auto. And I don't think it was exactly the first, completely open world game, but that's a very strong argument to make.
Oh,
Um, and that's it. It was, it was one of those revolutionary titles, I think, because that's it. It was gaming as we kind of, it was the first sort of uh, taste, if you will, of like the possibilities of gaming.
uh,
Like it was very much, that's it. Even, by today's standards, it's pretty primitive, but back then it was very simulation-esque almost.
it was revolutionary.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever seen anything like it. And plus, all the cheat codes that you could put into it were just
Hmm.
insane. You know, like I remember one time I was playing with a friend of mine, and we're just like, yeah, I mean, and the nostalgia of having the piece of paper with all the cheat codes for like unlimited ammo, unlimited guns, and etc. And me and my friend were just punching in like nonstop cheats, and just out of nowhere, guy runs up, slits my throat, and just runs away. And I'm like, of course, it says wasted, and I'm like, I have never seen anything like that before in my entire life. That guy just like literally ran up. Just some stranger. I was just putting in cheat codes. I wasn't even shooting anybody. I wasn't doing anything. Guy just literally ran up, slit my throat, just ran away. Like this.
Rolls
I was
up real
like,
quick.
yeah, never seen anything like that, man. You know. In fact, I guarantee you, if I went to like my grandparents' house and I started sifting through like all my old boxes, I guarantee you I could find a notepad that still got those codes written down to this day.
Shit, I reckon I've still got down in one of my old file folders, I've got basically a notebook of like video game cheats or fucking walkthroughs or just shit like that. And
Uh,
I do know that there was some shit on Grand Theft Auto written down somewhere. That's it. I'd have to do some digging too, but it's there. I know it is.
fucking error. But yeah, that's it. Like, I just had to bring up Grand Theft Auto 3 just because it's just the open world. Like, open world, it's damn near like mandatory in video games today. You know,
Uh, that
like I mean, I'm not saying it is mandatory. I'm just saying it's almost damn near mandatory. Like when it comes out, when a new game comes out, 60%, 70% of the time, people expect it to be open world.
mm,
You know?
There are many critical arguments that could be had about that. And on that topic, there's a game that really hasn't reached or received too much critical attention, examining it like, okay, is it good? Is it bad? So on and so forth. And I think that's it. Gaming just hadn't or the idea of gaming criticism hadn't caught up to that point yet. But this game certainly kind of revolutionized how we play games in a 3D space right now. Or now, like, well, I'll just tell you what it is and then talk about why. Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time,
One of my favorite games of all time.
as it should be. But uh, Ocarina of Time was really kind of the first game that decided, okay, we're going to do melee combat in a 3D space and we're going to figure it out and really try and make it work.
Hmm.
And like that's it. Every game that does melee combat in third person does what Ocarina of Time does now. It has a lock on. It has access to, quick weapons and shit like that.
Yeah.
Um, I would say it was also kind of really one of the first. It's a not completely open world, but it was one of those things where, like, Hyrule Field was just this big open playground that you could screw around in.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. You could also get lost in.
mhm.
Yeah, it was like one of those very first games that where you're right, it wasn't like completely open world, but it was open enough to where you could get lost in. And like a young kid like myself, like there was times I even got lost in and I had to figure out where I had to go next and so on and so forth. Fuck the water temple to this day.
Yeah.
Like, Um, Again, one of those things that's it started my anger issues. um, I actually have a funny story about Ocarina of Time. This involves Nick from people for listeners that don't know. Nick is my brother that does J&A podcast with us, and when I first got the Nintendo 64 and playing Ocarina of Time, I would get up to about three quarters of the way through the game. And me and Nick, obviously being brothers, always had our little spit bats back and forth, having arguments and fights and so on and so forth. And of course, me being the bigger and older brother, like Nick would always pretty much lose on every single one of those exchanges. But Nick
Mm.
was a slick little bastard, so what he would do is he would jump on my Nintendo 64 and erase my Ocarina of Time file.
Oh,
This happened 5 fucking times.
and he's
It took
still
me
alive.
yeah, it took me 6 to 7 playthroughs to actually beat Ocarina of Time.
Better that he was your little brother than mine, because I would have just killed him. That would that dude would be dead as a doorknob.
he he had my mom right there and to defend him every single time because he knew it was coming. Like as soon as he see me walk in the room, because their own room with the where the 64 was. As soon as he see me walk into that room, went and sat right by my mom because he knew what the hell was about to go
He
down.
knew that whooping was coming.
Yeah, yeah. And I would get it in. I'd be patient and I would get it in. But again, he would go back. I got to the point where I defended that 64 with my life. I don't know if if any of our listeners ever watched like Malcolm in the Middle, but like they've got episodes where where the two brothers pretty much go to war where they don't sleep and they watch each other at all times. Me and Nick have done that more than once. Like, and he's just sitting by the 64 like you're not coming close, you motherfucker. Yeah.
Valuable cargo.
Which get back on why the games are revolutionary, but you're absolutely right. Especially when it comes to the combat system of it. It was one of those first games that I've ever played that it was just the combat system felt free, if that
Yeah,
makes sense. You know what I mean?
and there's a lot that can be talked about. Was Ocarina of Time, actually a good game, stuff like that, and we won't touch on that here. But there is one thing that I do think merits discussion a little bit,
Oh,
and not only was it a landmark title in gaming in general, but it was also kind of a landmark title for Legend of Zelda, because that's when we started getting, the more strictly paced, narrative driven Zelda games rather than, say, in comparison to Zelda 1, where, okay, you're dropped in a field, there's a cave, you talk to a dude, you get a sword, you go, okay, if there's shit in this cave, there must be other caves I can find out, and those have probably got cool shit in it. So
yeah.
that's when we started. Or Ocarina of Time was kind of really the first time or Zelda games started to get away from that sort of very free exploration and into a much more linear, plot-driven adventure.
Yeah, yeah. It also um it also when it came over to America, man, it like took it by storm.
Mm.
Like it really did. In fact, I actually took down some notes on it because this is probably going to happen more than once. I didn't think we had so many the same ones on our list, but this is on my list too. And the holiday season when this game first came over to us, it sold of over 500,000 copies just in the holiday season alone.
Wow.
I mean, like Christmas time. I think it was like a month or two. I
Mm.
think between Thanksgiving and Christmas of the release date, it sold 500,000 copies, which back then for gaming is just like, whoa,
Yeah,
you know.
that's massive.
Yeah, that's like that's what you a phrase I've heard you say before when we were talking about Bloodborne. How many games can truly say that they're console sellers? This is
Hmm.
one.
Yeah,
This is
definitely.
this. Yeah. Um. Actually, this kind of intertwines a little bit into the one that is on my list.
Mm.
Um, If it wasn't for this next game, we probably would have never had Ocarina of Time, and that's Mario 64.
Yes.
Yeah, so Mario 64 for it's I think again I looked this up. Is a very if people that all if I'm wrong, you can make sure you drop me in the comments because whatever sources I looked at is but this is what it said that it before then every single game was 2D. This is the very first game that was 3D. Very first game that lets you explore and like how you were saying with Ocarina of Time, how you could walk around, explore, and hey, there's something here, so there might be more here. Well, so they got that for Mario 64.
Hmm.
You know, um, Mario 64, man, is still like one of my favorite games to this day. Like if I had to pick like stranded on a desert island and pick 20 games, Mario 64 quite possibly would be definitely be on that list. It, the movement in that game was also revolutionary too, man.
Yeah.
The, you know what I mean? I think it set the bar for how action games should be moved from like then. We I like if we wouldn't have games today like Warframe or anything like that if it wasn't for Mario 64.
Definitely. And
Hmm.
I guess kind of a note about Mario 64's development. Uh, One of the things that they did when they were making the game is that uh, they literally, most of the development for the game was spent on just having Mario in a completely blank open field and testing out his movement, seeing if it was fun.
Hmm. And
And
it was.
yeah, definitely. And it was also kind of just a a good evolution of Mario gameplay to that point because I mean, let's face it, what can you say about the 2D Marios? You ran to the right and you jumped.
Hmm.
And not only by breaking into the 3D space, but also doing it exceptionally well by making sure, all of Mario's movement was, absolutely perfect. Uh, they managed to evolve the gameplay along with that. You had the punching and the kicking, the triple jump, which has been in
Oh,
every 3D Mario game since.
yes.
Um, they've really. Mm,
It made you feel like you were a spider monkey hopped up on Mountain Dew.
mm,
You know what I mean? Yeah. Just sitting there, woo, woo, woohoo! Love it.
Waha! Yahoo!
Yes. Even when I was playing Mario Odyssey, like the only thing I kept thinking about was Mario 64.
Mm. What's
Even
funny?
even what's that?
Oh, it's funny you bring up Mario Odyssey because that was the game, or that was the last 3D Mario game I played, and I bought it specifically because I wanted to see, okay, 3D Mario has been a thing for God knows how long now. How has it changed? How is it different? And I would say, as far as all the different additions that they've made to Mario's moveset over the years, Cappy is probably the most interesting.
Yeah, it definitely was. It was pretty cool. It was different. It was original.
Mm.
Uh, I just personally didn't like it that much. I just liked the jumping around. Yeah, and the jumping around gave me nostalgia. I mean, even how you defeated Browser at the end of 64. I remember it took my dumb ass a little while to figure out how to beat him because he was like, I'm like, you gotta grab him by his tail and swing him around. I'm like, holy shit, that don't even make sense, man. The physics does not make sense in this game.
Dude,
But yeah.
it's it's a game where you eat mushrooms to grow bigger. Physics is out the window.
We're in psychedelic territory now. Joe Rogan would be proud. Oh,
Eat a
what you
magic
got
mushroom
next on?
and get a little
Yeah.
higher. Grab a fire
What?
flower and spit balls of fire. Anyway, World 6 9. But uh, this is a game that it was it was a landmark title because how gaming had really been progressing, and I might catch a little bit of flack from this one from the diehards, but I mean, I'm just gonna put this out there. Our podcast is called Nerdborne. All right. When it comes to this, we know what we're talking about. Dark Souls, the first one.
Oh, really? You're not going with Demon Souls?
Uh, Hear me out on this. Demon
I'm listening.
Souls did not get quite enough following to land it in the whole revolutionary thing. Now, yes,
Uh,
Demon Souls did it first, and I would argue that Dark Souls did it better, but okay, yes, credit where credit's due. But
hey, that is a fucking hill I will die on, buddy.
before y'all get the pitchforks ready, just hear me out on this. Okay, yes, the Demon Souls did the whole stamina based difficult combat thing first, but Dark Souls refined the original concepts of Demon Souls, and also it landed in a point in gaming history where difficulty was kind of going straight out the window. Uh, Gaming at the point in time when Dark Souls came out was kind of one of those everything wins. All the games were easy. Uh, there was
Well,
almost no
save point.
challenge to them. And Dark Souls was the first one that kind of just came out and said, "Listen, nah, people like hard games." And uh, that's it. It was a refreshing departure from the norm when it came to gaming at the time,
Yeah.
and I that's why I think also tend to feel so strongly about it was because it was the first game that came out, and even in general, Dark Souls will fucking kick you in the teeth. I mean, that's just how it do. Uh,
Dude, it kicked you in the teeth. Then it took your teeth out from the ground, shoved them down your throat, kicked you in the ass right off a cliff onto a pile of spikes, and said fatality.
I'm not about to argue with that.
Like, yeah, you're right. That game just had no forgiveness whatsoever. Not only did it did this, it said, this is how you move, this is how you swing your weapon, this is how you block your shield. Good luck, buddy. Go get him.
Hmm.
That's all it did. Even the hints of like where you're supposed to go and what you're supposed to do are just so subtle, man. Like talks to the guy sitting by the bonfire. He's like, "You hear the bells ringing? Yeah, you should probably head that way." Like that's about it, dude. That's all you get.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you also bring that up because the the undead prison as a tutorial area is one of those things that really kind of hammers in not only this game is out to kill you, but also kind of just the general approach you need to be taking to things because you need to be paying attention to the environment. You need to be looking around for basically anything that can help you survive because this game is actively out to murder you.
Yeah. Like, as soon as you walk through the doors, here comes a huge ass demon that you can't kill with your fucking fist. He is gonna murk their bitch ass. And
Hmm.
I wonder how many people tried to kill that son of a bitch until they figured out you're supposed to run through the fucking gates.
Oh, more than a few.
Oh yeah, yeah. I know I was one of them. I'm like, I think I'd probably try killing him. Like, I don't know. I don't want to say just 10 times in a row or something like that until I got to the point. I'm like, I'm pretty sure this game does not want me to kill him now.
Yeah, we're gonna have to come back to that.
Yeah, no shit. And then even right after it, you walk a little bit more, then you go to turn left to walk up some stairs. And here comes a fucking boulder.
That's it. That was the first sign that you will die.
Yeah, it's the first sign this game's saying to you, you're gonna get wrecked, son.
Hmm.
For
But
real,
also
man.
by the same token, that's the first instance of you need to pay attention to what's around you. You need to be cautious of progressing forward. And it was also, kind of the first time that, the game tells you, okay, after you go through an area, look around because the area can change a little bit based on your actions.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true too. It just especially like yeah, how you even got like how you got the Estus flask and all that because of the boulder opening up that pathway and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was it taught you how to play it without telling you how to play it,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like It made you have to think. It made you like it's definitely a game that you have to have patience playing. And if you don't like it, if you have zero patience and like if you're just like those got one of those guys that play those hack and slashers and you're just gonna rush in and swing your sword as fast as you possibly can and button mesh, you're not gonna beat this game, buddy. You're
No.
just not. You gotta learn patterns. You gotta learn movements. You gotta learn the counters. You gotta learn when to roll. You gotta learn when to strike. You got to learn how to just hit the guy 2 times and then roll, and just keep doing that in that pattern. And if you break that pattern one fucking time, you're gonna get mollywopped.
Splat.
Yep, exactly. I go on for on and on and on and on and on and on and on for Dark Souls, man. And like I said, I will die on the hill that Dark Souls is better than Demon Souls. I would not move. I love Demon Souls for all it's worth and everything like that, and I'm thankful for it because we got Dark Souls. But Dark Souls is just, in my opinion, it's the best game ever made. So, yep,
Uh,
uh,
there
I
is
will have no.
something I would like to touch on before we move on, but it, one thing that I also kind of appreciate about Dark Souls, and I don't know if this helps make it revolutionary or anything, but Dark Souls in general, the Soulsborne series, I could even say, has the effect on the player of really kind of just leveling you up as a player because you have when it comes to Dark Souls, you have to start getting into it and just dissecting the systems and really try and figure out how the game works in order to progress through it. And
Yeah.
that is something that kind of carries over to other games in a way that I don't think titles before Dark Souls really achieved.
Oh no. Oh no no. You're 100% right on that, dude. You're getting no rebuttal from me. Um, I could just do an entire podcast just on this game alone. Not
Yeah.
the series. Like I could do a series of podcasts on the Soulborn series. Period. So, um, I love
Yes.
Dark Souls.
We're called
I
Nerdborne for a reason.
yeah, no shit, right? Could call it Nerd Souls at the same time. Like it's just who we are, man. It's our games.
Yep.
Um, to bring it back to something a little bit more lighter than Dark Souls, I'm gonna go to one of the OGs of the motherfucking handheld systems in on Red and Blue.
Mm, okay.
The the best Pokemon games ever made. You guys can all suck it because it is the best Pokemon games ever made. All you newer kids don't know what you're talking about. Shut up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's face it, it was. Now, we can sit there and talk about how the roots of Pokemon have, or rather, like the whole premise behind Pokemon in terms of gameplay style is really kind of it harkens back to the Saga games, like Saga Frontier, Final Fantasy Saga, which I believe was called Mystic Quest here in the West, but that's neither here nor there. Of you just you assemble a random team of dudes and then you go out and do the things, but in this case the game or the team of dudes consisted of 150 different cute little monsters.
Yeah, that's pretty well put. I like I was like obviously part of the 90s, one of the part of I'm supposed to be a podcaster and I can't even talk straight. I was one of the 90s kids that was completely taken over by Pokemon when it first came over to our little country. I mean, a huge country. I mean, a shitty country. I mean, a country. um, it reminds me of that South Park episode where they had it, where they like make fun of like the Pokemon pretty much brainwashing the kids because that's what it seemed like we were like back then. The Pokemon
Yeah.
just pretty much brainwashed us all. But I remember watching the cartoons, and I remember getting my hands on the game for the first time, and I remember talking with you, and remember that we made it out to where I bought the blue one and you bought the red one, and we beat
Mm,
them, and then we changed them so we could play both of them. And I remember playing it for the first time and like beating the game, And I remember looking back, and I was like, "Dude, Ash sucks." I became a Pokemon champion pretty quick.
Oh,
I don't understand why it took that dude 20 years to win the tournament. Like, took me 16 hours. What the fuck, Ash?
savage.
Right? But no,
Yeah.
like I said on the previous podcast, man, I had I memorized all 151 original Pokemon, man. I was so much into them. I was like, I loved them so much.
Mm,
They were just it it made you feel like you had pets, but your pets evolved into these like gigantic monsters that felt like they would have your back, and like you know what I mean. Like
mm,
it's its own original game, and on top of that, I the game that made like Game Boy huge.
yeah.
Like if I say Game Boy, what's the first game that pops into your mind? Pokemon Red and Blue.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Hmm.
Um, and it's also kind of I would like to also say that it's interesting that you brought up Ash because Pokemon was designed as a franchise in general, and I do think part of its success comes from the fact that it was designed as a franchise. Like, you would get up in the morning, you'd watch the cartoon, you if you had a couple minutes before the bus came, you'd fucking, go try and grind, or you'd grind a little or try and catch a Pokemon
Oh,
that you've been trying to catch. You'd take
mhm.
it to school, you'd trade with your friends and shit like that. And
Oh yeah.
you'd wake up and do it all again. Like Pokemon had a way of just saturating the lives of, people in mine and Andrew's generation.
Yeah.
And I really think that contributed to a success more than the merits of the game on its own.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, because it was the thing with your friends. Like, hey, I was able to like remember the feeling when you first caught like a the Mew when you
Mm,
finally found him and you finally caught him. Like don't get me wrong, you're excited, but the first thing you wanted to do is tell me.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Yes, and the vice versa. I remember when I got that cable that you connect the two Game Boys to, so you could battle and trade Pokemon and stuff like that. Remember that?
yeah.
Oh yeah, the fun times of me getting my ass kicked. Like, but you hit the nail right on the head. That's exactly what it was. It was a generation thing. Like, it's just as much as yo-yos were. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
kids were, everybody was obsessed. Like, I gotta. Oh, can't say that. I'm sorry. Gotta get them all. But yeah, everything you said, I agree. Like, I don't think I could put it any better.
And that's it. It's just I kind of do like to think of Pokemon more as sort of just not just a landmark title in gaming, but really kind of a social experiment for gaming, because it was really kind of the first game that you really wanted to talk about or connect with other people about. Uh, even, oh wow, here I am. I'm supposed to be a podcaster and I can't even figure out what the hell I'm trying to say.
Ha! It's contagious.
I blame you for the podcasteritis. But really, that's it. It was, gaming couch co-op that had been a thing for a while. You and your buddies or your brother or whatever. You sit down and you play some Contra or you play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or any of that. That was always a thing. But that was Pokemon was really kind of the first game where you started trying to reach out to other people. Like, if you saw
Yeah,
somebody
yeah,
at school with a Game Boy, were like, "Oh, you got Pokemon? Oh, what Pokemon you got?"
yeah, yeah. Hell yeah.
Eh,
Even Yellow too. I remember when Yellow first came out. Like Yellow, like put you in like Ash's story, so
Mm,
where you got Pikachu first, and then you had to rescue like Charmander, like you did. Like you basically got like all the starter Pokemon, like Ash did. I like that game better because it made me feel like I was a part of the story. It made me feel like I was Ash, but I was better because I was actually winning Pokemon
oh,
battles. Uh,
oh,
All right, Ash, I won't hate on you too much. That's it, dude. I'm just saying, it took you 20 years to win a tournament, dude. That's well, um, what's the next game that you think that's should be mentioned as a revolutionary standpoint?
Okay, since we are on the topic of RPGs, this definitely fits. World of Warcraft.
I'm prepared to not say anything.
uh, uh, Andrew's never played World of Warcraft, though he has recently started to delve into Final Fantasy 14. And if anybody who knows a fuck about either of the games knows that uh, they have more in common than they have apart from each other. But uh, World of Warcraft was, I think, really kind of the pinnacle of, or it was the last breaking point of gaming really entering the mainstream before we started getting, shit like esports or uh, the games that would follow that, were real big mainstream successes. And I'd like to clarify, when I say mainstream, I'm talking about with the normies. These are games that really got people into gaming in general.
Hmm.
That's kind of actually a bit of a theme with all of my choices, save Dark Souls. But anyway, different conversation. It was really, I mean, to this day, WoW is the biggest MMORPG out there. It's, crushed, regularly crushed all its competition for a very long time when it came to MMOs in general. Uh, any MMO that came out was, the question around it was, is this what kills WoW? Is, this going to be a WoW killer? Can this compete with World of Warcraft? And a lot of us, I think, and we were always so interested in what could possibly kill World of Warcraft because it would have meant progress for the genre. And it's uh that's it. Like, say what you will about WoW, say what you will about the gameplay, say what you will about the iterations of gameplay, like that's how I understand, shit like Cataclysm now is a completely separate game from when I play World of Warcraft, which was Burning Crusade into Lich King. But that's it's just like World of Warcraft was the first game I really think that became a household name.
I definitely know a lot about it. I've tried on a couple occasions to try to play it back in the day. I don't know, maybe just at that point in time, I really couldn't get into MMOs, and it's still kind of hard for me to get into MMOs because I'm more of a single player game, obviously.
Mm,
Coming for you, I mean, you could tell from all the games that I'm bringing up. There's one thing I can't argue with, and it's its popularity.
mm,
I mean, that's like me trying to argue with like Minecraft's popularity. You know what I mean?
mm.
I can't dispute that. I could sit there and poke holes in the game all day long if I want to, but the sales speaks for itself. My father personally has played it for years. I think he played it for like a decade or something like that, a long ass time. But what seems, and they got, I will say that with this one thing about World of Warcraft fans, you guys are loyal. you
Mm.
guys are, you guys stuck with that game for a very long time. I hear that it's so bad now that you have to wait in line just to do quests.
I believe it. Well, hell, I remember that's it. Just even back when like Wrath of the Lich King and Burning Crusade and shit came out, there were lines to do quests and stuff like that because that's it. Every area was so congested. You had to go out and like kill four fucking bears, and there would be no goddamn bears, and there'd be a group of people sitting by where the bears spawned. Just shuffling in. Okay, I got my four, you got your four, so on and so forth.
Right, right. um, to bring up a popular game that completely revolutionized gaming, um, I have to. I know that I have brought it up in the past couple of podcasts. I'm not trying to sound like a broken record here, but if we're talking about revolutionary games, there's just no way that I can not talk about this game, and that is Skyrim. Like,
Hmm.
there's just Skyrim. Like we said on the last podcast, if anybody's listening, go back and listen to it because we talked about like the storyline, and on the one before that, we talked about the combat system. Hey, we're gonna bring both of those together right now. It really is way ahead of its time. The game was made in 2011, and like when you play it now, like don't play if like say if you were just to launch it, the original version with no mods or anything like that, I could like trick you into thinking that it was actually came out in like 2018 or something like that. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? It's just it's so open, it's so interactive, it's so massive. Like that's the reason why Bethesda is still has a big name to this day is because of that fucking game.
Bethesda.
Bethesda. Hey, I'm gonna say their name wrong until they start getting games right again.
Ooh, shots fired.
Yeah, and I meant those shots; those were intentional.
I
But
respect your stance there, sir.
yes, yes, they need to fucking start getting shit right. But that's another conversation. But Skyrim really was, man. Like there was no RPG before. Like you got Morrowind and you got what was and
Oblivion.
Oblivion. Yeah, you got a Morrowind and Oblivion, and they were good. Don't get me wrong. But the Skyrim was just on a platform of its own. Like it's to this day, dude. Like you can't name me so many other games that are as good as that game. Like there's a few out there. You can bring up like Witcher 3 or Dark Souls or something like that. But Skyrim is just like it's on a platform of its own. There's very few games that are just for instance, probably 20, 30 years in the future from now, when gamers that are sitting there playing in a video game like Ready Player One, and they're looking back on the history of gaming, this is one game that's going to pop up. It just is. Just like Minecraft, it's just like World of Warcraft. Skyrim is going to be one of those games that's just it's gonna go down in history as one of the best RPGs of all time.
Hmm.
And I But today, just so people have no idea, but today's actually John's birthday. So
Yay.
happy birthday, John! Made it around the sun again, you motherfucker. And for John's birthday, I actually bought him Skyrim, so he gets to try it out. So maybe on our next podcast we can talk about it a little bit more how he likes it.
And I did actually start playing it today. Basically, I haven't even gotten through the tutorial area yet because things are going on.
Yeah.
Uh, but I'm gonna have to wait before I, really give a much more of a critical perspective because that's it. I have no firsthand experience, but uh,
Oh,
like
I had to
for,
shut up when you were talking about World of Warcraft, so I get it.
but definitely I would think like you brought up, Oblivion and Morrowind, and there were even Elder Scrolls games prior to that, but nobody really
Yeah.
talks about them. But Skyrim, I definitely think is one of those things that it became a household name. Like how many of the other Elder Scrolls games have been released on 17 different consoles plus something I think is a fucking kitchen appliance.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. No kidding.
it's just it's one of those games that really has broken into the main or into true mainstream. Like uh there is a Twitch channel whose main draw is that it's an 80-year-old woman role playing as she plays Skyrim. Like hold like
Yeah.
what do you
Yeah. I've
say
seen that.
hmm?
Yeah, I've seen that. There's actually few stories out there like that.
Yeah, I mean that's it, Skyrim grandma, but definitely much love to Skyrim grandma. She's been going through some things. We won't get into that here, but if you're a fan of Skyrim and you're a fan of Twitch streamers for Skyrim, definitely send some love to Skyrim grandma. But
Yeah, I hope things get better for her.
mm, God bless you, Shelly. But
Yeah.
it, there have been a lot of critical analysis of Skyrim that I've watched, even though I never played Skyrim. That
Yeah, irony.
Yeah, irony. But they raise some very interesting points, and that's a whole other podcast. But I do have to sit here and respect the fact that Skyrim that's it. It's one of those games that really just broke into the mainstream. It's like Final Fantasy VII. You have to give it respect, even if you know,
Aren't that big
regardless
of
of
a fan
your
of it.
feelings on it.
Exactly. Exactly. You're 100% right. Correct on that, sir. I mean, it's a standpoint of video gaming. I mean, nowadays when they're coming out with like a big open world game, they're like, is it like Skyrim? Is it going to be like Skyrim? Is it going to have these aspects like Skyrim has? I mean, Skyrim is like when you're going apart the storyline, the decisions completely change the story. Like you can go one direction, you go another. It's just like it's the epitome of RPG. What is role playing game?
Hmm.
It is role playing at its finest. Like I legit feel like when anytime I was just playing it before we started this podcast. Like I seen you launched it on Steam, and I'm like, well, now I gotta play it. So I brought up my character, and like I'm right in the middle of the Dawnbreaker quest, and like they just ask you questions, and I feel like my character like being asked these questions, like that's a difficult one. Do I want to do this or do I want to do that? Do I feel like chopping off this guy's head or do I want to be merciful? Like a lot of times I lean towards the former.
Yeah.
But that's all. Yeah. But yeah, I just felt like I know that like we talked this like the third podcast in a row of talk about Skyrim, and I don't like I said I don't want to feel like sound like a broken record. People, I apologize, but like if we're talking revolutionary games, I got to bring it up. So,
I would say it's definitely fair to bring that up.
yeah. So do you have an one that I've never heard of?
Well, not that you've
I'm
never heard
joking.
of.
I'm joking.
Well, I mean, let's face it, I could have, but that would actually, I think, be a bit out of theme for this podcast. But you did
Yeah.
actually just mention it several times. Minecraft.
Oh, honestly, I knew this was coming, but at the same time, I didn't think it was coming. It was weird because we were getting far into this podcast. I was like, he might not mention it, but sure enough, he did.
Mm, Uh, Minecraft was not the first game, like many of the games that I've picked for this podcast. It wasn't the first game that did what it does, but it's the one that really kind of honed it down. And I really think Minecraft is separate, really. Like, yes, Minecraft is a video game, but really it's more kind of just an easy access creativity tool because like Minecraft doesn't really have a plot. What happens, okay, yes, there is a list of goals that you can accomplish that will cause the game's credits to roll, but that's not really what you do with Minecraft. You build things, you make, interesting things like I've been fuck. If I wasn't about to really dig into Skyrim these past couple of days, I've been fooling around in Minecraft. Just I found a village, so I'm building a castle around it. It's just something to kick back and relax with. Throw on a podcast, hey, or some a TV show you're watching, and just fuck, relax, make something.
Yeah, again, I'm prepared to just shut up.
But
I've never played Minecraft.
well, here comes the pitchfork horde.
Bring it on, fuckers. I play good games.
Oh, ooh, okay. Even I'm
Yeah,
gonna have to be a bit shun
Mine-
the
Minecraft is Fortnite before Fortnite, in my opinion, man.
no, not
Yeah.
really. Okay,
Hey, I
this
said in
is
my
okay. We're just gonna set that topic aside. We're gonna put a pin in that. That's a whole other podcast episode. Uh, wow, yeah. So Andrew, game, revolutionary title, go.
I got you on this one. I'm gonna make you feel a little bit better, John.
Oh
Just
Lord,
a little bit better. The last episode you didn't even bring it up, and I'm so proud of you. But I'm about to. Guess what it is?
is it Devil May Cry?
Devil May Cry 3, buddy.
Okay.
See, you feel a bit better now, don't you?
Okay. I'm interested to hear your perspective on this because I know why I want or why I suck the game's cock. But what makes it thinks or what makes you think that it lands in the revolutionary category rather than just being a really good fucking game? This I'm actually curious about.
It is a really good motherfucking game. Like that one, I can't express enough. what I think makes it revolutionary is its complete attitude. I mean,
Hmm.
obviously, the fighting style on its own, it has its own merit. But one thing that really stands out to me about the game is it's just this attitude of the game. Like Dante is like basically the demon form of Deadpool. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Mm,
he's like, he's just a badass. He knows he's badass. Knows he can kick your ass, and he's gonna talk shit while he's doing it. And at the same time, we're going to play some heavy metal, and we're going to have you mess everything up in a 100-mile radius. Like, the attitude in the game, I thought it was revolutionary because it was kind of like, we'll find a way to put this. The best analogy I could possibly think of is like making a heavy metal video game. And like Devil
hmm.
May Cry 3 for me was like one of that first genre of that.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Uh,
I don't know. That's good.
Kind
It
of.
makes sense in my mind. So,
I
like,
get where you're coming from, but like I don't know if this really counts as revolutionary. Like, uh, don't get me wrong. You guys have heard me suck the game's cock for the past 3 episodes, so we're not gonna sit there and go on that. But as like a revolutionary game, like the game is definitely a landmark in the Devil May Cry franchise because, well, that's it. One was much more subdued, and let's face it, it was kind of a Resident Evil knockoff. And I don't
huh,
mean that in a bad way, just that's how the development kind of went. Um,
huh.
Devil May Cry 2, we don't talk about. Obviously, Devil May Cry 3. The remake tried to capture that, but in a way that was popular to the kids, that wasn't really popular to the kids. So we'll set that aside. Um,
Yeah, that's the
yeah.
reason why I actually brought it up is because I feel like it is a revolutionary game, but I feel like it's an underrated one. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like, you don't have games like God of War without Devil May Cry 3. You don't have games like what's that Metal Gear Solid slasher one?
Oh, Metal Gear
The name
Rising.
escapes me right now. Or the hack and slash
Yeah.
Devil. I'm sorry, the hack and slash Metal Gear game.
Yeah. Metal Gear Rising.
Thank you.
Revengeance.
Yes, thank you. You don't have games like that without Devil May Cry, and at the same time, the same thing with the fighting style of it too. Like, it really did open up its own genre completely. Like, and I don't mean just in like the gameplay. I know I'm having trouble trying to explain it, but I mean like the attitude of the game. Like, there
Hmm.
wasn't many games before that had like that kind of attitude. They could like really get away with it. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it's just that it's just full of heavy metal. It's full of very graphic combat. It's full of just badassery. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And I think that's the reason why we got games like God of War after that, and I think that's the reason why we got many other games like that. I could see what you mean by it's not as revolutionary as all the other games that we brought up in this topic, but I think in its own way it still is.
I would say I'm inclined to agree with you, but I would say it's maybe slightly out of the scope of kind of what I was going or like the theme I had for this podcast. Like, I definitely agree with everything you said.
Hmm.
Um, but like that's maybe I guess okay from a critical perspective, the whole character action genre is really kind of limited right now, and it's honestly only being done by a couple of different producers,
Hmm.
Capcom obviously and Platinum Games. Those are the two biggest names in the whole character action genre. And I think
Right, right.
maybe if we got to see, some other developers or publishers who were dipping into that franchise or that style of game and dipping into it more commonly, like this or Devil May Cry 3 would definitely be on this list, but I don't think the character action genre has really kind of taken hold in gaming.
I You do have a point there. It definitely is uh kind of died down. There could be a resurgence. Devil May Cry 5 was dope as hell.
Yes.
I enjoyed the hell out of it. I enjoyed the hell out of the story and the gameplay. Um, Like I said, I was more leaning towards like the actual attitude of the game that it just brought. Like uh, I could see where you're coming from. I could see what you mean.
And just to be clear, like I'm not downing your opinion. Like I do
Oh no, you're
definitely
good.
agree with it.
Oh no, you're
Uh
good, dude. I didn't take it that way.
oh no, like it's not a game that I would have thought of in terms of this, so it's definitely interesting to hear you explain it. And like I'm inclined to agree, but I don't think that it has just kind of the scope or scale, I guess.
Okay. Well, it could be like that for me because it's the first game that I've ever played like that. I didn't
Mm.
play one or two. Like Devil May Cry 3, like when I played it, it like completely blew my mind away.
Hmm.
It's like the music, the attitude, the fighting style, like the switching between the styles, like the whole thing. Like I don't know, I was completely blown away by it, and I haven't played like many games like it since. But no, I mean I have played many games like it since, but every single time I played it, that's what the game reminds me of is Devil May Cry 3. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
so that's the reason why I brought it up. And I also brought it up because, like I said, I thought it was one of those underrated Revolution. I mean, I get what you're saying by revolutionary games, and I do agree with you. I'm just saying it's one of those underrated ones. Like, of course, a lot of people know it's a fantastic game, but it seems like it's right on that like clip. It's like right on that line of stopping before becoming like a name like Final Fantasy 7 or Mario 64. You know what I mean? It seems like it
Hmm.
got to that great point and then it stopped right at that line before it got to that like legendary status.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think I think it deserves that legendary status.
Hmm.
That's just my opinion. My humble opinion, but I also think Minecraft sucks, so what do I know?
Well, okay, I'm just gonna let that former one drop. Uh, or rather that latter one drop. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting perspective, one that I wouldn't have thought of. And I mean, well, fuck it. That's kind of why we're doing this podcast, is so we can share perspectives and stuff like that. So good on you,
Yeah,
Andrew. Fuck.
yeah, cool. So what do you got next?
I brought this up earlier, and perhaps this is the most recent of landmark titles in gaming, but or perhaps this isn't a landmark title in gaming specific. Well, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and stick to my guns here. It's a landmark title in gaming, and it's a landmark title in the franchise, and that is The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild.
Oh, two Zelda games in the same podcast. That's right, folks.
Nintendo knows what the fuck they're doing. We're just gonna go ahead and say it. But
They're not like Bethesda.
Bethesda, Bethesda.
No, nope. I told you. Until they get the games right, their name's gonna be pronounced wrong.
Okay, you know what? We're making that a channel meme. So yeah, but data. Uh,
My bad, gone.
but getting back on topic, Breath of the Wild was a revolutionary title for the Zelda series because it was the first time we broke away, or it was the first time since the first game, we broke away from that very narrative-driven linear plot progression that had been a hallmark of the Zelda series, and that's it. It also changed the way you do dungeons, the way you explore the world, uh, the way you actually progress through the main quest and stuff like that, and just the whole notion of, okay, you completed the tutorial, you're ready for the final boss, go for it. Uh, that blew people's fucking minds. Like there were speed runs of the game available, literally hours after its release. Um,
Hmm.
eh, and that's just part of why it was a landmark title in the Legend of Zelda franchise. I think that it gets a landmark title in gaming uh, accolade for the simple fact that it was really kind of the first game that was, or well, not the first game, but it was a very immersive sim like game. Like I don't know if we brought this up on the podcast, but we've certainly had this conversation. Um, there is a number of puzzles that involve electricity, where and connecting circuits together and stuff like that. and one just one of these puzzles I didn't want to try and find, the electricity ball that I needed to finish the puzzle. So I'm just kind of sitting there like, well, I got all these metal weapons. So what happens if I just, use the magnesis rune and, lay them out and connect the circuit that way? And it worked. And it was one of those things that simultaneously blew the fuck out of my mind and made me love the game even more.
Oh yeah, it's got a lot of those aspects entwined into it. I mean,
Mhm.
there's even times where they hide treasure chests underneath water. Sometimes you got to pick it up with that the magnet. And
Mhm.
there's times like there was the guys right by it, and I'm like, I wonder if I could just smash these guys with this treasure chest I need to pick up. And sure enough, I did. Smashed the hell out of them and got the loot out of the chest. I'm like, this game's pretty flippin' sweet.
And
Now,
I,
the interesting thing is too, like we were talking about Ocarina of Time and about how it made you feel free and it's like
mhm.
3D and everything like that. And it always blew my mind for years of why Zelda, Nintendo, like made Ocarina of Time that made nothing like it after.
Mm.
They just kind of went back to the old style of Zelda for like the longest time, especially for like the 3DSs and everything, until Breath of the Wild, and then when I played Breath of the Wild, it was like, this, why haven't y'all been doing this for years? Like, what took you so long?
Nintendo, why?
Yes, yes. Like, I know we talked about it. I don't know if we talked about it on this podcast, but John's actually the one that convinced me to buy the Nintendo Switch just to play this game. Like when
I
we were
did.
talking about like console sellers, Breath of the Wild did that for me.
Mm.
That's yeah, and I was not disappointed whatsoever. Like, 3 different I think I have 3 or 4 different playthroughs through it, and almost 100% on every one of them. Like, it's just a fun game. Like, the mechanics in it are just absolutely great. Um, and like you said, like, it's the freedom in it. Go wherever you want, do whatever you want. Like, you go save the princess right away if you really wanted to. You know what I mean? Mario, take some notes. You know?
And on the subject of freedom, this is, something of a concept or this is something I'd kind of like to hear your opinion on actually. Um, One of the things that really impressed me about Breath of the Wild is, and this requires a little bit of setup, but okay, as gamers, we have a certain expectation of how video games work. Like,
Uh-huh.
the puzzle example I gave you, where, you just link together a bunch of metal weapons in order to complete the circuit.
Right.
Now, video game logic, or speaking in terms of video game logic, you wouldn't consider that to be a valid option because what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to get the one orb, you're supposed to put it there, and then you're supposed to go and get the other orb, and then you're supposed to put it there, and that's what unlocks the thing to progress. But
Mm.
especially in this case, and like we've said, Breath of the Wild is full of situations like these. Instead of using just straight video game logic, like, okay, grab the key to do the thing, it kind of used actual logic. And it's the first game that's really kind of done that for me. And I'm sure some people are going to sit here and go, what about Deus Ex? What about Hitman? What about this game or the other? But Breath of the Wild, that was the first game that I really stopped thinking of just in strictly video game terms and really just started to monkey around and see what would work.
Mm.
And, any other game I do that, I'm just doing it to kind of a desired effect, or, seeing if I can get around, what the developers are trying to start, or what the developers are trying to make me do, cut out some of their
Yeah,
bullshit. But
I get that.
yeah, Breath of the Wild was the first time I really started looking at things and going, okay, what if I did X, or what if I did Y?
And if there any of our listeners right now do have games that are like that they're like being going through their mind that, hey, this game did that before, and drop it in the comment section. Me and John are not closed-minded people. We're always open to new things. But you're right on that. One example I will give you on the mechanics
Mhm.
is like in a lot of these puzzles, there's like several like what are they called, vines or whatever, that are
Yeah.
blocking off sections and shit like that. So what you basically got to do is like you're supposed to take a fire arrow and like go shoot it. Well, I'm like, I didn't have any fire arrows. I'm like, so what if I just take a regular arrow and I go towards one of the torches? Does it light on fire? Fuck, it lights on fire. Okay, what if I don't have any arrows? I have a wooden sword. Would that work? Fuck, it works. You know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those games. Like, hey, you got anything to do wood? You got a tree branch that works as a torch. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, well, that not many games have mechanics like that. And like, man, I can't wait for the second
Oh, yeah.
one.
Like,
uh,
I'm genuinely kind of concerned with the second one because there's no way it's going to be as good or as revolutionary as the first one. Like, don't get me wrong, I'll probably enjoy the fuck out of it, but at the same token, that's it. Like, Breath of the Wild is a landmark title for gaming and for the Zelda franchise in general, uh, because it is. I mean, well, that's you've just heard us talk about that.
Yeah, like I know that we've basically been doing podcasts at Nerdborne. We're only in our fourth episode in. We're basically like sticking to list and everything like that. But I just want to let people know there is going to be podcasts that are just dedicated to certain games, and obviously Soulsborne is going to be one of them. And this game is definitely going to be one. I guarantee you there will be an entire podcast just dedicated to Breath of the Wild because that's how much of big fans me and John are of this game.
Definitely.
Oh, oh, absolutely. But I think for right now, we're gonna wrap it up with that. Uh, Anybody that's listening, if there's any revolutionary game, any huge standing point game that we did not bring up, be sure to drop it in the comment section, and we will do you the favor of giving the holler at your name, a shout out, or whatever you call it, and let people know that we should have talked about that game. Gotta
Mm,
understand, there's so many out there, man, and people's own opinions. It's hard to pick. We get it, we get it. And also, please don't attack me for not liking Minecraft. We really hope here at Nerdborn and J&A that everybody is being safe out there. We hope that you guys are we hope getting back to work. We're hoping you find some kind of normalcy. We'll also hope that you guys are being safe. Um, Friend John here has always got something he likes to say at the end of every podcast, so I'm gonna let him take it away.